What's up, guys? This is Teddy. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This video, we are going to be talking about public static void main in Java, and I'm going to be doing it in a way that even a new software developer can understand, and you will actually understand like really what public static void main is doing. So public static void main, and this is a quote from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs always used to say that underneath a lot of the software that we use is bedrock. At one point, things like web frameworks, things like cryptography, you had to actually build all of these things by hand. But because we're in the modern era of software development, you get to use a lot of this bedrock code that is already coded for you. And Java has a bunch of it. JavaScript 2, every single programming language has a bunch of like this bedrock code, and it exists in so many different forms. It's mind-boggling. But just remember that underneath Java is a lot of code that you are using. Public static void main is where this initial sprout of tree or life comes out of the ground. It's the point of conception. It's where the sperm and the egg meet, if that's, kind of too much information, but it's literally the point at which the program's life starts. It's where, the point of life starts. And so if you were to initialize a public static void main, or if you were to run this initial program, not only do you run your code, but you're running a lot of other code as well too underneath. And this initial public static void main is just by arbitrary circumstance that this is where the actual programming starts. And I'll start off with knocking out the easiest thing first. So what is strings? 99.9% of time, you will never actually have to deal with string args. What this literally just means is that whatever is going to go into this part of the main program is going to be an array. But what is it really though? So whenever you actually boot up your program, you can pass in arguments, and since there literally is no other place that you could pass these arguments into, this is where those arguments are going. So if you typed in, and I'm just going to say, this is just like an example, this isn't even real, run Java, and say you wanted to pass in some other arguments, this is where you would pass them into, and you would run this in a command line, and that's where those actual arguments are going to be passed into. So now we've gotten that taken care of. We don't have to worry about that part anymore. What is the main? Main is just the key word that the developers who made Java and all these other programming languages too, this is the same thing in C# as well too, is that main is just the arbitrary thing that they decided to call it. Like I'm sure that there's a way that you could change this, but this is just an arbitrary name that the developers who made Java decided to go along with whenever they made it, so that there could be an actual entry place, because if there's no main, then there's no entry place. So we don't have to worry about main, or we don't have to worry about main anymore. So let's go ahead and let's talk about void. What is void? Void is a fancy term for this actual method returns nothing. So if you are going to run a piece of code in here, void is a return type, and void means that this program will return nothing at all. It may alter other parts of your program. Maybe it goes out to a database, but as of now, as of anything inside of this actual main method, there's nothing that's going to be returned. And if I were to say change this to number, like let's just say if I just put a num here, I would actually have to go into here and I would have to return a real number, whether it's in the form of a variable or whether it's in the form of like a real number, if you see what I'm saying. So now we've got void taken care of. So the best version of what a static method would be our SOUT, our SOUT, our thing that allows us to actually be able to print stuff to the console. And you can see it right exactly here. System out print line. If I go in here and I take this, I'm going to go ahead, copy it and paste it into here so we can get a better look at it. So what is this, like, what makes this static? So what makes this function static is that it's actually being called by the class right here. If this function were not static, which 99% of functions are, you would have to have system print here, and you would have to what's called initialize this actual class. But because this class is static, we don't have to actually initialize it, and we can just simply call it by its class and instantiate the actual method. Now, is this a bad thing? Yes, having too many static methods can be a bad thing, and this is going outside the scope a little bit. You probably don't need to do this, but static can actually kind of be a bad thing because you can't unit test static methods, and this is for a beginner course, but if you can't unit test stuff, it's going to be difficult to have it in a production environment, hence why people typically stay away from static methods. So now we're at our very last word here, which is going to be public. And all public means is that you can go into here, and let's go into an actual program. I'm just in Spring Boot, just fiddling around right now, but let's just say if this is not public, let's just say I turn this to an actual private. What is going to happen is that this program is going to break because I can't use it. And you don't even need to know what a class is, but I can't use this anywhere else. I can't go into my actual root file here, and I can't go in here and just say post controller. But if it were actually public, I would be able to access it, but in this case, I can't actually access it. So public and private just kind of is the way that it sounds. In your programs, they're going to be split apart by files, and if you have private, you can't use that actual piece of code anywhere else in your files, and that is pretty much what public static void main is. If that cleared a lot of things up, make sure to hit that like button, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and as always, thank you for watching.